to someone that said that it's just a phenomena, right? So how are we knowing where are we directing the plasticity to? Because it's a double-edged sword, right? So maybe I just want to get a sense of the kind of knowledge, right, that you all have. So I don't want to be too irrelevant, okay? So do you all have to speak a lot with medical practitioners or therapists, and so are you all aware of kind of what is out there for clients?
Actually, during the course of social work studies, most of them actually came across this term, and then they know something about this term already.
Okay.
So they have some basic knowledge on what is it all about.
Okay. Right, so today maybe a little bit deeper than basic knowledge, but I just want everybody to be relaxed so that I also can be relaxed. Right, and I think what will be very useful will be the Q&A later. So maybe I'll just run through things and see if it stirs anything in your brain, okay? All right, so what do? We rewire brains to change lives. Okay? So IFN actually stands for Institute of Functional Neuroscience. The headquarters is based in Perth. They have offices around the world, and we just so happen open one in Singapore, right? So now we have this available to us here. The founder of this company is Dr. Randy Beck. He's a functional neurologist. He also lectures in neuroscience and things like that. And there's this entire field. When you hear about neuroplasticity, it's usually associated with this field called functional neurology, right, or functional medicine, right? And he is one of the few that uses EEG. Later we'll talk about EEG in depth, but it's a way of trying to understand what's going on and using brain scans. Right? So a lot of the tests, if you heard out there, is maybe blood tests or maybe hair analysis, but this one actually looks at the brain. Right? So that is pretty interesting. He's been around for, well, he's been doing this for about 30 years, okay, but the clinic itself is about 10 years, and for Singapore, it's coming to 3 years. So we started just, when we start, then COVID happened, right? So it's about 3 years now. These are just some of the organizations that he's worked with before, like Harvard, and he's primarily a researcher, right? So he spends most of his time kind of crawling the research, and all the stimulations that you hear me talk about later, they're all been vetted by him, right? So they need to reach a certain level of validity, then it's included. So in a sense, right, you can say that nothing we do is original because it needs to be validated. But what is unique, I think, is the way that it's put together. Because not many people, there's a lot of work you need to do to put it together, because you need to understand kind of every aspect of things. Okay, so that is him, the researcher. And yeah, so with clinics around the world as well. Okay, so in case you all can't see that, right, it says that what we do, we combine latest understanding of neuroplasticity, brain mapping technology, and functional neurology to improve brain performance. Okay, so what this actually means is we identify areas of dysfunction in the brain. And these are underlying areas that will lead to or can contribute to symptom-generating areas. Right, so I think most of us, when we hear about the brain, we'll know that certain area of the brain is responsible for this, a certain area of the brain is responsible for that. I'm sure when you talk to carers, and when I talk to the carers of patients who come in, they will use that as a diagnosis, right? So they'll say, that's the problem. But the typical experience is that their progress in terms of therapy is either plateaued or doesn't seem to work. Right? And this is where we come in, because we want to look at the underlying areas of the brain that might be contributing to the symptom generator. Okay? And this is exciting because it can go beyond so-called illness, okay? Because we're actually working on performance. And the underlying premise is you need to have this belief or trust that the body knows what to do. Right? We just need to find out how to let the body get out of its way, right? So that whatever needs to happen can happen. Okay. Unique approach allows us to tackle. Okay. So rewiring the brain is something that we came up with. Okay, that's related to neuroplasticity, because neuroplasticity, if you don't have any background, it just sounds like a big word, and it doesn't really mean much to people when they hear it, right? Maybe it will give them the sense of, wow, this is very advanced, right? But what does it mean? Right, so neuroplasticity means neural brain, plastic, moldable. The reason why it's important now is because last time people thought that whatever changes that happen in the brain was quite permanent. Okay, so that's it. You can't do anything about it. But what we've discovered so far is that yeah, changes can happen, and if there are areas in the brain that are missing, for example, even in stroke, when there are large areas that have just are not there anymore, new connections that can be formed to kind of let you do what you want to do, right? So that's the whole process of trying to use the phenomena of neuroplasticity to guide it in the direction that you want it to go, okay? And then how are you going to do that? Okay, the example here is quite okay. So the example they gave here is, if you have someone who had a stroke before, so depending on the region of the brain that's affected, the symptoms will be different, right? So sometimes it's understanding of language, sometimes it's expression, production of language, and what usually happens when you go to therapists, they will usually try to train that up, right? Train the weakness up, or maybe break a very complex thing up into smaller bits, and then you have the milestones for them to go. What we are trying to do is to see if there are areas that feed into that region that is kind of dysfunctional. Are there areas that we can improve so that this guy can heal better? Right, so in a real world kind of setting, what we experience is people might have been under therapy for a while already, and then they plateau, okay? Then what else is there to do, right? Then they will search, and then we will come up, and then we have a look at the brain, we intervene, and we see that plateaus can be broken through, right? So we are trying to help them to reach their potential as much as possible. Okay. Why are we raising awareness with social workers? I think you're quite aware of this already, and for me, it struck me quite